Hello, my beautiful people. You are tuning in to another episode of the Shed Some Light podcast, a podcast where people of color can share their stories about their experiences with police brutality, profiling, targeting, and more to shed some light on what people of color go through with their interaction with police officers. On this episode, I have our very first guest to share his experiences with us. Now, this person is a dear friend of mine. He's been a friend of mine for over 15 years now and was once the fastest high school athlete in the state of Minnesota. Let me welcome my good friend Chi-Chi to the podcast. What's going on, Chi-Chi? How's it going?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show today. I'm
Of
very honored to be one of the first to be on the podcast with you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on board, especially with everything that's going on. I know it must be hard, mentally, emotionally to, live right now. So how are you feeling with everything going on?
Um, it's tough times. It's been hard for me to really support the whole movement now because having a full-time job and it's hard getting off work, and with the whole pandemic, it's hard to really just focus on what's really important, because I have to make sure that obviously I take care of my job first. But with the events that happened last week, it's an eye opener for everyone to really make sure that we engage in some sort. Being a little bit vocal, if it's through social media, just spreading the words, and examples just like this podcast, giving us different platforms just to spread this message to make give better awareness to everybody.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted you on board too. You had shared with me you got a couple of experiences you wanted to share with the world. So let's just start off by introducing yourself. Who are you? Where you live? Where you grow up? So on and so forth. Then we get into your story.
All right. So like you said, yes, at one point I was one of the fastest kids alive in high school, but grew up in New Brighton. It's about a small suburb of Minneapolis. Um, Growing up, when I really thought about it, I know I saw this question the other day. When's the first time you had a black teacher or whatever? And I really thought about it growing from elementary school to middle school to high school. I don't think I ever had a black teacher till I reached middle school, where we had more of a discipline uh, para in the building that I remember of. So just growing up, it was just, I was surrounded with a lot of white people. Nothing against the white people. Had some great friends growing up, so I have pretty good relationships with a lot of them till to this day. Um, One thing about me, I'm a big athlete, big into sports. Doesn't matter what kind of sport, I'm competitive. No one likes to lose. So growing up in a family of five, being Nigerian, it's a lot of responsibility for the first child. So I think that kind of matured me and shaped my views and my morals and values as I got older, to always make sure I took care of my siblings and my family in the need be. Uh, Before I got to high school, my dad actually took a job in Arkansas. So it was a decision time if I was going to go with the family or the family was going to stay up here. My dad made the ultimate decision to just go down there and take care of the family while we're up here. So when my father kind of did that, I kind of understood, like what a man's supposed to do, no matter what, to take care of his family. So I strive to be like my father and that role model, to make sure taking care of my siblings and so forth and so forth.
And that's interesting. You shared that about the teachers because you and I went to the same middle school and high school. And now that you mentioned it, I don't remember ever having a black teacher ever. The only black person of authority that I remember was our coach, Coach Russell. Shout out to Coach Russell. If you ever listen to this, thank you for everything you did. He was
Russell.
our running backs coach, and he was amazing. And he was really the father figure while we were in school. And now I think about it, that was the only black role model I had within the school. Okay, so thanks for coming on board. Let's start off with your experiences. You said you had a couple experiences. Go ahead and just start off with the experience. What year it took place, what happened, so on and so forth.
So yeah, obviously as people of color, we go through different kind of interactions with the police. Some are minor, some are major, obviously. But one thing I know is that once I got my license around the age of 17, I believe, my mother would always just tell me, when if a police officer stops you, you know what to do. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Hands in the air. She always had that fear. And being where I grew up, I wouldn't say that I was naive to what was going on, but just more like it didn't really affect me because I maybe didn't have too many enforcement. But I did have a few. The first one I want to share is I believe this happened 2010. I think I'm 1 year removed from high school. I had two of my uncles, I believe, in our van. Um, Now that I think about it, I think our van was at the car shop for a little bit. I'm not sure what happened to it, but I think it was something with the AC or something with the engine. So we had a switch on the car that if it's on, it helps the car run smoother or something like that. But I'll never forget. I think I was on 94, about to get onto 35E, heading back with my two uncles back to our house to get ready for my sister's graduation, and the van started to smoke from the hood. So I was like, obviously, I'm not gonna keep driving the car like that because for whatever reason, if it stops in the middle of the road, I don't want those problems. So I pulled off to the left side of the highway. I went out, I popped the hood up, get the smoke out just to make sure nothing, crazy's going on underneath the hood. Then I called my father just to let him know what was going on and what the situation was, that we're fine. And I was just waiting for his call back to see what the next thing we should do. Um, I went back in the car, literally put the seat back. Windows were down because it's summer, obviously, graduation. Had my, I don't know if I had my feet out the window, but I had my receipt back, just relaxing, just waiting for the phone call. The next thing you know is I hear is, let me see your hands. So I look back, it's the police, and before I had no idea where they come from. I put my hands up in the air and all that. But when I look at the rearview mirror, he has his gun drawn on me, and I'm thinking like, okay, um, he sees the car is not functioning. Maybe I'm a threat. I don't know. Who knows? But maybe he doesn't know what's going on. Okay, I can give him the fact of that. But if you see a car that's stalled out, I don't think you're that much of a potential threat. But who knows? So he came and approached me and asked me what I'm doing here, and I'm thinking in my mind like, "What do you think I'm doing here? I'm stuck. The car's not working." I don't know. So he said that I guess there was a camera that was on the highway at some point that's been watching me, that we weren't doing anything. So I was just told the officer that, "Hey, I'm waiting for my father. He's supposed to call me back of what to do." Blah blah blah. I think I put my hands down for 1 second, and he pointed the gun at me. Like, so at that point I was scared for my life because I want to say I was 18 at the moment, at the time. And I don't know if you ever had a gun pointed at you. It's not a good feeling, especially
Mm.
nowadays. It's a lot more common, and social media wasn't as big as it was back in 2010. So having that, my heart sunk a little bit, like, oh my god, what's going on?
Mm.
And my uncles in the back were just quiet because I don't think they've ever experienced anything like this before. After it was all said and done, the cop kind of just said, "All right, just make sure you hurry up and get the car off the road." The button that I talked about earlier, I think it was accidentally on somehow. When I turned it off, the car started, and we're on our way. Once we got back to the house, I kind of told my dad about the whole situation, and I said, "Yeah, they pulled a gun on me." He was highly upset. Uh, I think after the graduation, I don't know if the next day or not, he said he was going to go down to the headquarters of St. Paul, the police, and try to figure out why would they pull a gun on his son. No threat, smoke was coming out the hood. It's not that I was going to run away, but that was kind of like my first major experience with the cops, and it kind of changed my perspective of them a little bit. Just saying that what my mom always told me: you always got to make sure you got your hands up where they can see them. Be as respectful as you can, and just try to make sure you keep the situation calm all the time because you just never know.
And that's crazy too, because I've actually had guns drawn on me by police officers before as well, and my reaction was instant anger. I shouldn't have anger in me when I saw that, but I was upset because at the time I was outside. I'm not gonna get into the story, but I was outside sleeping. We woke me up, yelling at me with the guns drawn. So I definitely understand the fear and the anger that you felt, and that's just crazy. Well, where else would you be going with the stalled vehicle? You can't. You're waiting for help. The police officers are supposed to be there to help you, and their first reaction was to put the guns on you. And I'm sorry that you experienced that. Um, what's the other experience that you had? You had a couple, right?
Yeah. So this one's I think it was Fourth of July weekend. It might have been the day after Fourth of July weekend. Me and the girlfriend went out to go eat. I think we went to Outback. So I was yeah, I had maybe one or two drinks, so I just wanted to get home. Um, on the street that I've lived on for almost 20 plus years, Long Lake Road, and Timmy, you're well aware of this. It's 30 miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
No way am I going to speed on that road because from where our high school is located on that street, cops always hide all over the place.
There's so many
So
cops.
many cops
So many cops.
on Long Lake for over 20 years, so I know not to speed when I get to this road. I'll never forget there was a kid on a moped. Mopeds are allowed on the Long Lake Road, driving fairly slow. So I said, I don't want any problems. It looks like a young kid. I'm going to keep my distance. So I was driving maybe like 20 miles per hour on the road, keeping my distance from the moped. I got to my parents' house, got into the driveway. I left the car on because it was the summer, obviously. Again, like my previous story, I put the seat back, one on my phone, and I was just, usually when, I don't know why, but something in my family, when we get home from anywhere, we usually sit in the car for another 10, 15, 20 minutes, just being on the phone, looking at our phone. And I think I was reading some type of article. The next thing you know, I hear this knock. And I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, when did my dad come out the house before I didn't spot him? It's a
Mm-hmm.
police officer's talking about, do you live here? And uh, I think my window was down. And I looked out and I said, why would I just be in someone else's driveway with my car on, just relaxing here if I didn't live here? And I said, is there a problem, officer? She began to say that they got a call of a motorist speeding on Long Lake. And I looked at her crazy, like, me speeding? Come on. I've lived here for over 20 years. I know better to speed on that road. That a neighbor called it in that I was tailing someone on a moped. So I looked at her like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I was just on Long Lake, but I can assure you that I didn't speed. I came right home. I live here. She didn't even ask for my ID. To be honest with you, I didn't even know how she knew where I was at, where I lived. But um, the one thing about this officer, I have seen her in my neighborhood a few times. So I don't know if she just recognized my car and wanted to stop and talk, but I thought it was really just kind of ironic and weird that all of a sudden, when I'm just at my house, my own property of my parents, that the cop came up to me asking me all these questions. When, from my recollection, I don't remember seeing anybody on the road outside, so I don't know if it's just just targeted me or whatever. But it wasn't a crazy situation, but I think it was just more crazy that the cop knew who I was and knew what's going. So
When you said that you recognized her, do you recognize her as in living there or just patrolling around the
Uh,
neighborhood on
just
duty?
patrolling around the neighborhood because in New Brighton they have a few undercover cop cars, and she drives one of those cop cars now and then. I would see her at the gas
Mm-hmm.
station, makes eye contact. So I when I saw her that one time at my house. Before that, I probably have seen her around three, four, 5 times. So we never spoke, we never interacted or anything like that. But she's seen my car, I've seen her get in her car, stuff like that. So it was just kind of weird that just happened in the ride. But I didn't want to, like I said, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it because I was said, hey, I'm already at home. I don't know what you're talking about. If you're not stopping me for any offense, please let me go on with my day. So she just said to be careful next time, and she was on her way. So
Be careful. You were being careful
yeah,
by leaving the room for the
I
moped. That's
it's
crazy,
crazy,
man.
crazy, crazy.
So, based on these two experiences, and also, I know you have more, but just on these two and what you've, all your interaction with police officers, how has your perception changed with police from when you were growing up to right now?
Um, to be honest, too, then when I think about it, one of the girls in my class, and it's crazy, my last name Ojika, and her last name was Olson. I know you're aware of her, Ashley. Her dad was a police officer, Officer Olson. So he would always come once in a while if like growing up in elementary school, like if she was in my class, her dad would bring the fire truck and all, do all that stuff to see the police and the fire stuff. As a kid, it's pretty cool because you're kind of innocent, you don't really know what's going on and all that. So I didn't really have a bad taste in my mouth about police officers, but when it started coming to these, nitty gritty things of, oh, you did this, you do that, I'm like, how did you even see that? Where did you come from? Like, are you sure, or are you just trying to find something to pin? So my perception is, but I never want to really get too aggressive with them because I've known that the outcome is not always going to be the best for the people of color. I know sometimes they stop you for some whatever reason, and you're doing nothing. But sometimes just staying quiet and trying to buy with them, just to get it over with. Because for me, when I have interaction with the police, I want it to be over as soon as possible, because I want to go on with my day, and I'm sure they want to go on with their day, and I don't want to have that extra conversation if it's not needed. Because they have a tough job. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to say one little thing to trigger them off, and then the next thing you know, it's over. So um, obviously it's changed for me a little bit. I wouldn't say a little bit. It took a while for me to change because, like I said, growing up where I grew up, um, it was kind of a quiet neighborhood. But as I got older, and when I got a license and started driving more and started realizing more with social media, I started saying, okay, these guys, there might be a few bad ones in the force, but I don't want to come across those few bad ones. So I always try to,
Yeah.
always try to mind my business on the road and try to obey all the laws that I can.
And that's such a scary way to live, to be like, hey, I want this interaction to be over as fast as possible because I want to live. That's basically how we're living is I don't want any interaction, or I want to minimize my interaction with police officers because I want to live to see tomorrow. And that's something that I hope our listeners are understanding as to why we're so frustrated, upset, mad, sad, all the emotions, because this has been going on forever, and thank you for sharing that experience. I'm sorry that you had to go through those two experiences as you did. But before I go on to the next question, what year was that second experience
Oh, that's
for you that happened?
almost kind of recent. I want to say almost probably 2016. So it wasn't too long
Oh,
ago.
wow.
So
Okay.
I think it was when more of these videos started coming out about the police brutality. So that's why I was a little shocked that she showed up at my driveway, knocked on my trunk, and came to the side and asked me if I lived here. So I was just kind of surprised, shocked, and just didn't want it to escalate because in my mind I thought I did nothing wrong. I got home safe like I was supposed to, and I was just doing what I like to do, read some articles. So
Mhm. Okay. Well, in light of all the events going on, especially more specifically the George Floyd murder, which was tragic and it happened in our backyard, what change do you want to see when it comes to police and their interactions with people of color like us?
don't be afraid. I it's you gotta see everybody as a human being. You know, just because someone's big, got muscles, doesn't mean that they're a threat. Some of the biggest guys you can see are some of the guys with the biggest hearts. So
Mhm.
um, let's have a conversation. I know that things escalate, but let's not try to have things escalate. And I feel like the police can do a lot on their side to listen to what the people are saying. I think I saw a video the other day about they looked up if a guy didn't have some driver's license. He said the driver's license is in the trunk. Instead of saying, okay, you're arrested because you wouldn't give me your license, the police officer could have, not have the man open the trunk because maybe there's a weapon inside, but have the police open the trunk if there's a bag in there, see the license, and then go from there. So um, I think it just needs to be better communication with the police officers to, whoever they pull over and just get a better understanding of the situation. First of all, what I would like to see is better training. I don't think what is it? Is it 6 months of training? I don't know that's sufficient enough. I think that you need to prep police officer a bunch of situations because you never know what kind of situation you're going to get yourself into as a police officer. And for them, they got to understand that they took a tough job. There's going to be days where people are going to talk back, be rude, and might tick you off. But as a police officer, you can't let that get to you. That's part of the job. When you signed up, you have to understand that some people are going to get nasty with you. Some people, I wouldn't want to say violent, but they might run their mouth. The one thing is authority. Everybody loves to have power, you know, but don't abuse the power that you're given. You should really respect it because if you respect that power, I'm sure people will respect you at the end of the day.
Mm. And that's very powerful. That's very powerful right there. It's I'm a huge superhero fan and superhero geek, and that really reminded me of Spider-Man. That honestly reminded me of what Uncle Ben said to Peter about great power and great
Right.
responsibilities. And I feel like with training as well, that's going to really help them out because 6 months isn't a lot long. There's so many different situations that officers get put into, and it's hard for them to be unprepared for every single situation, but 6 months is entirely too short to prepare to be a police officer. And I know that most police officers are good, but the few bad apples are what we're seeing in the media right now, and it's ruining lives for not only people of color, but the good officers as well, who aren't people of color, because now they're looked on at negatively just because of their role, even though they're trying to change the world. So I think that's very powerful, Chichi. Thank you for that. Um, Before we end this podcast, do you want our listeners to know anything else about you? Any happenings going on in your life, in your friend's life, family life, anything?
Just let the people know that, we're all this together. I think people of all color, white, black, purple, pink, blue, I think people are really trying to, get change in this country. And it's nice to see that big corporations now are starting to donate. Um, One of my good friends, Damon Johnson, I think said it starts in the schools, man. It really starts in the schools with education, because when I think about it, we didn't touch much on slavery, the injustice. I know it's a very uncomfortable topic, and maybe that's why they want to talk about it. But I think these conversations need to happen. It needs to happen when we're younger, because we're not we're not taught to love it or to hate. Or they got to teach us. You're not born to hate. You have to be taught to hate people. We got to teach them that it was wrong what happened in our schools, in the education, and understand the racial judgment that happened and that is still happening. So I think people just need to speak up with whatever voice. We got to unite, and I think we're doing a great job. When I heard about this protest, 50 states, 18 countries. It shouldn't take all that much, but if that's what it's going to take, and I think the people are speaking. And I about an hour ago, I think that the cops can't use the chokehold anymore on suspects. I think they just said that. I read that somewhere. So it's a step that they shouldn't even have to use. But now that it's illegal or whatever you want to call it, I think it's a big win for us. So.
Mhm. And just to piggyback on that, this is the most non-people of color allies I've ever seen from a tragedy like this. I've never, like you touched on, all 50 states had a protest. I've gotten outreach to by many different people, just checking in on me, see if I'm okay, see how I'm feeling. And to all our allies, I really appreciate that. We appreciate that because we need y'all. Because you guys are the majority. We need your voice. We need you to back us up, and we need you for change. So I appreciate all our allies. And Gigi, I appreciate you for coming on the podcast again. On behalf of people of color everywhere, I'd like to thank you for shedding some light on your experiences, excuse me. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining in as we share our experiences with you. If you have any stories you'd like to share, or know anybody who does have a story they have to share, please send us an email at shedsomelight@outlook.com. Again, that's shedsomelight@outlook.com. Thank you so much once again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Until next
All
time.
right. Thank you again, Timmy.
Thank you.